Hi, everyone, and welcome to For Immediate Release. This is the monthly long-form edition, episode 437 for November 2024. I'm Neville Hobson, coming to you from Crewkerne, Somerset in England, on a time when the weather's weird as usual. We have high temperatures at the moment compared to snow we had a week or two back. But here we are with another episode, and boy, do we have topics here. So
we do. I'm Shel Holtz in Concord, California. It's California. It's sunny and nice. That's why I live here.
Yeah, great.
We do have a great episode for you today. We will be talking about social media in the year that is wrapping up and the year ahead. We will look at the realities of generative artificial intelligence in the workplace today, get beyond the hype and look at where things actually are. Ethical Wikipedia editing is on our docket today, as are the challenges that companies are going to face speaking out about social issues in the next 4 years. Gosh, I wonder what's happening in the next 4 years. We'll also take a look at the growing ecosystem of apps for the social network Blue Sky and Coca-Cola's advertising disaster. Dan York is here with a terrific report, and we will get into all of that after we do a quick rundown of the short midweek episodes that you may have missed since our October long-form monthly episode.
Indeed, and we've only done 3 since the last monthly.
We've been busy.
There have been some time pressures, I must admit. So, but 3's good. Some great topics we talked about. So the first one, episode 434, that we published on November the 13th, was looking at the reports and what people have been saying about the analyses following the US presidential election. And that a fact emerged, or a view emerged, that mainstream media and social media have wielded far less influence than they have in the past. And influencers and podcasts held sway. So we talked about that and the impact on communicators for way beyond the election. In fact, interesting topic we talked about. Episode 435 on November the 20th, that talked about that topic that is a recurring topic these days, it seems, which is return to work. But this was the mandated returns, was the theme of this one. And talking about the reasons executives give to their employees why this is important. Talked about the serendipitous opportunities people miss if they don't come back to the office, and they need to boost productivity, which coming back to the office does. And of course, there's alternate views on that. That's one of the reasons we talked about this. And indeed, you had the example of a financial services company that has seen eye-popping increases in performance metrics since listening to its employees and adopting a policy that lets them choose where they want to work. No mandated back to the office. That was a good one. I think you've got a comment on that one, Shel.
Well, we do, from Diane Karch, who said that the episode was timely, given the move to return all federal employees to full-time in office. I suspect that's a way to reduce the ranks more than anything else, she wrote in a comment to the LinkedIn post on that episode.
Interesting. So then episode 436 that we recorded just a week ago, actually, that, again, Blue Sky. We're going to talk about Blue Sky, as you mentioned, Shel, at the beginning in this episode. And this was a midweek short episode just on Blue Sky. It was an interesting one that talked about what they're trying to do, how they're growing it, what's important to them. And we looked at the potential of Blue Sky and whether communicators should consider establishing a presence for the competitors, for their companies or clients, and why they should do that. A timely topic, without doubt. That's the reason we did it, because I keep seeing nothing but Blue Sky being mentioned across mainstream media here in the UK now. It got that attention. So it's definitely on an attention roll without any question. So that was a good one. And we have a comment for this one too, don't we?
Actually, 2. The first one from our friend Lee Hopkins in Adelaide, Australia, said, totally agree. Joined 9 months ago, was underwhelmed, ignored it. Now involved with it because more and more of our tribes are appearing on it. And our friend Donna Papacosta said, same for me.
I'm sure many have that view. I see people talking about that themselves in posts on Blue Sky. And just in case anyone didn't know this, you and I joined Blue Sky during the private beta in 2023, I should say. And it kind of was a tool that sort of sat there, and we didn't really do much whilst we were paying attention to Threads at that time, I know. But suddenly, this has really kicked off since the beginning of November, coincidentally around the time of the US presidential election and Trump being the winner. An exodus, big time. Not the sense of closing down and moving, but moving and maybe keeping things back there. Things have evolved from that now, and it's certainly something that is getting attention. From 7 million subscribers to 23 million in the space of a couple of months. So this is no idle thing. Is it the next big thing? That was something we talked about. Well, that remains to be seen. But it's an interesting topic and a hot one for communicators, without doubt. So the other thing we did in November was publish a new FIR interview. On the 6th of November, we published this. This was with Monique Zitnik. A name will be familiar to you if you're focused on internal communication in particular. But we had a great conversation with Monique, didn't we, where she talked about trends, AI, and authenticity in internal communication. Quite a bit about her book that she had published a few months back. But that was a really good conversation with Monique.
It was, and we had a comment on that one too. This from IABC EMENA's official account, saying this is what IABC is about: members connecting, sharing insights, and inspiring others globally. They must have been talking about Monique and me. You're not a member. I also want to let everyone know that Circle of Fellows has been posted, as it is every month. Episode number 110 focuses on executive communication. I was joined by 4 IABC fellows, Alice Brink, Julie Holloway, Marianne McCauley, and Kish Mukherjee joined us from India to talk about executive communications. That is up now on the FIR Podcast Network, both for video viewing and for listening as a podcast. There is a Circle of Fellows feed that you can subscribe to. So 111 is coming on December 19th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We will be talking about communication serving as a foundation. I'll be joined by Russell Grossman. He's from over there in the UK with you, Neville. Theo Mary Karamanis, Martha Muzichka, and Neil Griffiths, who's also UK-based. Again, December 19th, that's a Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I'll be moderating that panel. I'm looking forward to it. It's an intriguing topic. I think it leaves us a lot of latitude for discussion. It should be fun.
So I think most of us would agree that 2024 has been a tumultuous year in many areas of society and our lives, but our focus is on social media in this topic we're going to talk about. Wide-ranging events in that landscape have characterized 2024. Threads hit 275 million users, according to Mark Zuckerberg. The turbulent and sharp decline of X, formerly Twitter, the sudden emergence of Blue Sky as a compelling alternative, racking up 23 million users in a matter of weeks, as I mentioned earlier. And the rise of movements like Brat Summer, redefining online culture. It's been nothing short of a seismic year for social media. As platforms rise and fall and user behavior shift in real time, the need to anticipate the next wave of change has never been more urgent. 2 standout reports from Batten Hall and We Are Social, published just a few days ago, offer us unique lenses through which to understand these shifts. In the year ahead in social, Batten Hall highlights the importance of social-first strategies, AI-driven insights, and the growing role of private digital spaces like messaging apps. At the same time, We Are Social's Think Forward 2025, the Livable Web Special Edition, shines a light on cultural and emotional trends, such as users craving deeper connections, rejecting polished perfection, and seeking moments of joy in an overwhelming world. Let's unpack some of the key ideas from these reports and explore what they mean for communicators. Batten Hall predicts a shift where social media will no longer be an add-on to marketing strategies, but the primary focus. In 2025, being social first means ensuring social platforms drive the entire user journey. With AI evolving, the potential to refine messaging, protect communities, and unlock predictive insights will be transformative. However, brands must also navigate the rise of dark social spaces, those private networks where authentic personal engagement can thrive. And as users increasingly migrate to platforms like Threads and Blue Sky, the social sorting process will reshape the digital landscape, forcing communicators to rethink where and how they connect with audiences. On the cultural side, We Are Social emphasizes a broader emotional evolution in digital spaces. Gen Z rejects the polished, curated ideals of the past in favor of unfiltered authenticity, finding connection in chaotic, relatable content like Charlie XCX's Brat Summer. Meanwhile, amidst global crises, many users are turning to light-hearted, low-stakes interactions online, celebrating small luxuries, embracing wholesome hobbies, and seeking relief through uplifting content. This trend complements the rise of intentional consumerism, where audiences increasingly cherish sustainability and meaningful use of what they already own over relentless consumption. We're also seeing the growth of modern myth-making, where fans actively engage with hidden narratives and Easter eggs in brand storytelling, strengthening their emotional ties. Finally, the push for new intimacies signals a shift back to the social roots of social media, with users craving more personal, communal experiences in their digital lives. Together, these trends highlight a social media ecosystem that's becoming more strategic, more emotional, and more human. Communicators will need to adapt their strategies not only to follow technological advancements, but also to align with shifting cultural values and emotional needs. So as we take a look at these predictions, Shell, do you have any trends mentioned here, or others even, that most resonate with you?
Well, there are several here that resonated with me. One being using the social spaces as a primary focus. I think that is important, but I don't think that it is an all or nothing proposition. I'm thinking about the fact that more and more people, particularly among Gen Z and millennials, are getting their news from Instagram and TikTok. The question is, where are the influencers who are presenting that news getting the news that they present? A lot of them are reading news. I mean, on TikTok, there are hundreds of people who have lots of followers who all they do is read news stories out of magazines and newspapers. So if we stop getting our content into magazines and newspapers, then the influencers who are reading that are going to read stuff that in which we have no share of voice. So I would not ignore the mainstream press. It's just a reprioritization that I think we need to look at. Another one that really struck me is the need to get involved in private digital spaces, the WhatsApp groups that are really attracting more and more young people who want to have the network, but they want to have it with a group of people that they want to interact with and not the whole world. And tools like WhatsApp and Snapchat allow them to do that. So how do we break through to those folks? These are trends that I think are absolutely coming. And, the social network that I still don't hear people talking about very much. Everybody's talking about Blue Sky, and there's a good reason for that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, and it's not important. But Reddit is still there. Reddit is still one of the top visited sites on the web, and tremendous influences wielded there. I don't know that it's at the same level it was when they called it the front page of the internet, and when BuzzFeed was the hottest thing on the planet. They were getting the stories they were going to do based on what was trending on Reddit. But it's still an important place with some very granular communities that are not difficult to join. And, if you're a communicator looking to wield influence over people, wielding influence over people on Reddit is not a bad idea, but nobody talks about it.
Well, on the topic of Reddit, I mean, I've been a user of Reddit since 2006, 2007, active recently in particular. But I think I agree with you, by the way. But isn't it really to do with if your audience is there, then that is where you need to go too?
Because you need to go where your audience is. But
right, and therefore Reddit's definitely not a kind of mainstream destination for everyone. Again, depending on your audience. So I look at some of the subreddits I'm participate in, and these are niches. These are absolutely not mainstream. So they've got big numbers, no question. Indeed, I saw a report just yesterday saying that in the UK, Reddit has now got more action going on it than any other social network. That needs to be nuanced a bit in terms of understanding, well, who is there actually? Is it, is it your millennial group? They're not there. It's the Gen Zs there, but which topic? Because in this group over there, it's actually full of boomers. So it's a very complex network that needs you to be, I think, very clear on who your audience is there. And if they're there, then that's where you need to be.
I think every organization should find out if there are subreddits that include people talking about their space, and then analyze, is this a large enough community that it warrants our attention? Who's in this community? It doesn't need to be large if these are all serious influencers who are taking what they learn through their interactions on Reddit and sharing it elsewhere to large audiences. I know this is what used to happen with BuzzFeed, right? And I just think that, by the way, the other thing is that I'm noticing more and more of my Google searches are pointing me to Reddit conversations where the answer is, particularly on how-to issues, because there are a lot of those out there. There's, subreddits around the Meta Quest VR headset. There's subreddits for virtually every digital product out there where the fans of it and people who are wrestling with them are interacting with one another. So it's actually driving traffic. Google drives traffic to Reddit. So another reason to consider that. Another thing that you mentioned was unfiltered authenticity. And I think that that's something that people really need to be paying attention to. We do something where I work. It's a Takeover Tuesday, where young project engineers, this is an entry-level position in the construction industry, take over our Instagram account and showcase whatever project they're working on. And this is on Instagram stories, and they're pretty popular. There's something about having these young employees talk authentically but enthusiastically. It's genuine, authentic enthusiasm, and it comes through. That I think people really appreciate. And in terms of our audience, which we're not trying to convince people to build their $600 million building with us by watching an Instagram story. We're trying to convince engineering students to come work for us. And it's pretty enticing stuff when you see somebody just a little older than you, just out of school a year or two, wearing their PPE out on an active construction site, waxing poetic about how great this project is. That type of thing goes a long way. And I think companies would do well to consider that kind of curated employee-generated content.
Yeah. One thing always surprises me when we talk about this kind of thing, Shell, is like, surely this can't be like, oh, it's a good idea from a listener. I mean, this is not a new thing. This is what you should be doing always, surely. Knowing your audiences, tailoring your communication to them, engaging with them in ways that, I'll use the word authentic, which has many meanings depending on a number of factors. So maybe this is part of it, that what goes around comes around, in the sense that we are hearing in these reports, particularly from We Are Social, or Batten Hall too, for that matter, on the desire from certain audiences, particularly younger generations, for meaningful communication with brands, let's say. So the perfectionist, the slick production values created content that has been at the forefront for years. In fact, I was thinking today, looking at on one of the TV channels that I actually watched terrestrial TV for a long time. We're seeing now all the ads from the cosmetics firms, and these are slick movie quality productions with celebrities doing the voiceovers. And I often wonder, and I'm thinking this more now, who on earth relates to that? Normal people don't really. Maybe it's aspirational. Again, I'm not going to do a heavy analysis, but that surely is what we are moving away from. This is what the survey, these results of these reports tell us. People are looking for more honest, more relationable messaging from brands they'd like to engage with, that they can actually believe. And that is not believable, those amazing lifestyle ads for cosmetic brands. So I wonder why the hell they do that. They must make money at it. I guess sell more stuff at Christmas. That could be it.
Well, they're trying to reach the people who can afford those perfumes and colognes. That's
That's
not
got to be it.
necessarily Gen Z
That's got to be
right
it.
now. I mean, Johnny Depp isn't going to appeal to anybody in Gen Z anyway, right? I don't know if you've seen
That's
him
got to
out
be
there
the
selling
case,
a
yeah.
cologne. Yeah, he's
Excellent.
a pitch man now. What can I say?
Yep.
Another trend that you mentioned that I was intrigued by was this craving for communal experiences. And I think there's another opportunity. We used to have a lot of organizations that had departments focused on promotional activities. I remember when I worked at Mattel, we had wheel races in malls all around the country, people getting together and doing stuff together. And I don't read about that kind of thing that much anymore. And I think there are opportunities for brands to arrange activities and events for people to get together in the real world and do something. I mean, imagine the Instagram photos that will come out of things like that. And, you know, in the scheme of things, not the world's most expensive approach to marketing either.
No, I mean, I think that's what We Are Social refer to as new intimacies in their report, where people are craving deeper connections and seeking online spaces that foster community-driven interactions. So, you know, what does that mean for communicators? Well, you've pretty much nailed it. Leverage niche communities and personalize your engagement strategies. And I think, again, this seems so obvious, but focus on creating spaces where audiences feel seen and valued. And that's not new, but this is, again, something that we need to be doing more of in this changing environment. So there's lots to take away in these reports, by the way. Batten Halls is a well-produced, easy to digest in the content sense, the way in which it's presented. So you go to the website, fill out the form, and you'll get a PDF version. We Are Socials, on the other hand, is what I called an everything reality presentation. There's video, there's animated graphics, animated text, even talking heads popping up here and there, only available in your browser. So that's a whole different proposition. It actually got me thinking a lot, the contrast between the two. Maybe We Are Socials is aimed absolutely at a Gen Z audience, at the exclusion almost of anyone else. If you want a nice, comfortable PDF you can read at your leisure, you're not going to get it. This is real time in the moment. You'll see this. And you'll need to have your headphones on or your speakers on because it's an audio-visual presentation. It's very well done. So different approaches. They're different topics, but they're very complementary, both from Batten Hall and We Are Social. I think they did a really good job presenting all of this. There's other reports that come out too in the past couple of weeks, and you'll find them if you search on similar themes. What's been happening in 2024 for social media and what's coming in 2025 and what you need to pay attention to. And a bit of overlap in all of them, I suppose. But these two did strike me as definitely worth paying attention to, and there will be links in the show notes.
No shortage of what's coming in 2025 posts.
We're in the season, aren't we, Shell? This is the time for everyone to do their report. Yeah.
And also on We Are Social, it's an unspoken final comment that to their presentation, which is, if this is what we did to present our own report, imagine what we could do for you.
Nice one.
Well, the landscape of workplace AI adoption has undergone a pretty remarkable transformation over the last year. Speaking of looking back, organizations have moved beyond the gee whiz phase into serious implementation and experimentation. According to comprehensive new research from the Wharton School and marketing consultancy GBK Collective, we're witnessing what could be characterized as AI's coming-of-age story in the enterprise. Let's start with a headline number that really grabbed my attention. 72% of companies now report using AI at least weekly for work purposes. That's nearly double the 37% reported just last year. Now, what's particularly fascinating is where this growth is happening. While you might expect IT departments to be leading the charge, we're seeing dramatic increases in adoption instead across all functional areas, including departments that were previously hesitant adopters like marketing, operations, and HR. This is entirely consistent with the message I've been sending as much as I can. This isn't like Workday, where IT implements software everyone will be using pretty much the same and can train everyone the same on how to use it. With generative AI at this point, especially use of the frontier models like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, every individual and department has to figure out for themselves how it's going to help. Speaking of organizational structure, though, one of the most intriguing developments is how companies are adapting their leadership to accommodate AI integration. About 1 in 5 organizations, 21% to be exact, have now created chief AI officer positions. We'll see how long that lasts. I imagine there's been a significant decline in the number of chief metaverse officers over the last couple of years. I have to say, I still shake my head at how loosely so many organizations imply the officer label. Anyway, the vast majority of companies, 91%, are keeping their AI strategy development in-house. They're not relying on outside consultants. This suggests to me that organizations are viewing AI not just as another tool to implement, but as a core competency they need to develop internally. It also suggests there's going to be some serious consolidation among all those AI consultancies that have cropped up. The employee's perspective has evolved significantly as well. Remember the early days when workers viewed AI with a mixture of anticipation, amazement, and trepidation? That's shifted fairly dramatically. Today, 90% of employees see AI as skill enhancing rather than job threatening. That's up 80% last year. That's up from 80% last year. The shift in perception from replacement to enhancement is crucial for successful adoption. I am, however, still detecting reluctance to use it among a lot of employees, even millennial and Gen Z employees, largely due to personal security concerns. What I find particularly telling is that about half of enterprises currently have few or no restrictions on AI usage in the workplace. This represents a remarkable level of organizational trust in both technology and employees' judgment in using it. However, it's worth noting that larger organizations tend to implement more stringent controls. Only 15% of companies with annual revenue over $2 billion allow unrestricted AI use, suggesting a more measured approach as the stakes increase. It may be in these companies you'll find those employees who won't use it for fear of getting in trouble, or use it but don't tell anyone for fear of getting in trouble. Investment patterns tell an interesting story too. While 72% of companies plan to increase AI budgets next year, 57% anticipate these increases will be moderate, just between 1 and 10%. This suggests we're entering a phase of more calculated ROI-focused deployment rather than spend-at-all-costs approach that we saw in the early adoption phases. What we're witnessing comes down to AI's transition from a speculative technology to a practical business tool. The key now will be how organizations balance enthusiasm with pragmatism and innovation with responsible governance.
It's interesting. It reminds me something you mentioned there about Chief AI Officer. We talked about the kind of expansion of C-suite job titles quite a few times, maybe at least 2 episodes. We talked about that recently. And this struck me when I heard you say it. This is an example of that.
Here we go again.
Right. And you said how long it will last. That's the thing. So yet, for many organizations, I'm sure that is what they're going to have to do to get this get traction with this whole topic rather than being done piecemeal. But it is interesting. The Wharton report, I was reading the summary as you were talking. They are concluding that, and this will be like, well, yeah, type response you might have to this, which is what they're saying. Organizations will keep experimenting with AI to figure out how it works best for them. Well, yes, that's what they should be doing. And you've got some metrics in here which kind of emphasize the value of doing it. It's interesting. One thing they note, as it evolves, so will other technology required to make it more usable and practical, such as voice interface. So there's a lot of things happening in parallel that may not be apparent when you first think about how am I going to use AI in the workplace. But also one thing, it relates to what you said, employees, perhaps using a tool that without telling anyone because it's not authorized. That's exactly what's going on in many organizations. And the companies that don't open that up in a better way than this are the ones who are likely to suffer, I would say. Because what happens, it's inevitable. I was thinking back to something someone told me not long ago, that they're not allowed to use ChatGPT in the workplace. So what they do is download a copy from the website under a different name, even a pseudonym if you like, and they use that for their work stuff. So by contrast, in a large organization where ChatGPT and others like it offer, what do we call them, an enterprise version of their tool, that's a wholly different animal to the consumer version that you just download off of the website. So you end up then through bad policies in the organization, is how I pitch it, in the sense how I describe it, opening yourself up to all sorts of risks by not having an effective way that recognizes people's concerns and enables them to do something about it, rather than blanket, you're not allowed to do this, so they go ahead and do it anyway. That says a lot about the organization. That's a different avenue to explore, but trust and belief and all that stuff is in there, and that's lacking in that situation. That's dangerous to my mind. So there's lots to think about in this, it seems.
What a lot of employees are also doing is getting the ChatGPT app on their personal phones, and
similar, yeah,
they just use it. In a lot of organizations at this point, what employees have access to is Microsoft Copilot, which is kind of a difficult tool to parse, considering the many flavors of Copilot. But there is the base Copilot that just comes with Office 365 that basically gives you an interface that is ChatGPT 4.0. Microsoft does not have their own frontier model. They're investing billions and billions in OpenAI. And so this is what employees are using is ChatGPT 4, even if the company is saying you can't use ChatGPT, they're using Copilot. So I think it's interesting that organizations think that they're preventing something bad from happening. Although when you go through Copilot, your queries, your prompts don't get saved and used as training fodder for future models. So that's one reason companies may want employees to do that. I think those organizations that are saying, we don't want you using ChatGPT, use Copilot, employees should shrug and say, fine, because it's the same damn thing.
I don't use Copilot. I have, Microsoft 365 subscription, all that, but I don't like the style of it. That's the reality. And it may well be the best thing since sliced bread, which I do not believe it is.
Well, for employees who have no choice, though, it's there. They can use it.
But if you have choice, I think I'd use something else. But it's the landscape, Shell. That's basically it. There's so many ways you can use a generative AI tool, and there are many generative AI tools out there. So to me, that reinforces the reality in an organizational setting to set out very clear guidance to employees on what to use, how to use, when to use it, why, without being, read the 65-page instructions on what you got to do. Don't do that. People aren't stupid. You've got to trust people, although here people are arguing that you can't trust people. That's a hell of a place to be if that's your belief.
We've done a ton of communication around AI where I work, and employees know that it's there. They know they have access. What they're asking is, okay, how do I use it? So we're now planning some lunch and learns around effective prompting and things like that. I think this is what communicators need to be doing is, one, they need to be promoting the responsible use of generative AI in the organization, highlighting whatever policy is in place, letting people know what the risks are, letting people know what the organization's plans are for advancing the use of Gen AI, but also helping people figure out how they can figure out how to take advantage of it in their jobs, how to write good prompts, how to figure out which tools are appropriate for you, how to figure out how to identify those workflows in your job where AI can make you more productive, make you more effective, make you more creative, if that's what's called for. The more we do that, the more we share stories of employees who are doing it, the more everybody's going to get it and say, oh, I can do that, and start using it. So I think we have a very important role to play on the internal communication side of things.
Totally agree. Opportunity for communicators there, no question. Okay, so Wikipedia We all know what Wikipedia is. The encyclopedia anyone can edit, founded by Jimmy Wales back in 2001. I use it daily, often not consciously. If I'm searching for something, whether I do ask the question in Google, increasingly less likely these days, or via Perplexity, which is my preferred alternative to Google for the kind of how do I, where is, what is, etc. type questioning. Or even what's the phone number of the pharmacy? It's your favorite one, shall I know? Wikipedia shows up still typically in the top 5 or 6 search results, again, depending on what it is that you're searching for. So it has evolved. It is a phenomenal resource, and it has a role.
I have to say, just because it fits in what you're saying, I use it mainly when I'm watching TV. For example, we watched a 6-part documentary about Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy Wars, and they talked about flat-nosed Kate Elder. And I said, I wonder if that was the same Elder as Katie Elder in the movie The Sons of Katie Elder. And I said, I'm going to go to Wikipedia and find out. And I do that all the time when I'm watching anything with a historical context. I'm always using Wikipedia in front of the television.
You're a good use case, Shell. It's a good use case. In the organizational communication context, Wikipedia has a big role for communicators. And one of the things we'll talk about now, and it's a topic we have talked about before, particularly going back some years, is a valid topic, ethical editing of Wikipedia. So we're going to revisit this using the example of Butler Inc. And I'll explain what Butler Inc. is in a minute. So to set the scene a bit, Wikipedia has been a foundational pillar of the internet for over 2 decades from its founding. It's the 5th most visited website globally still. I remember it's being claimed that for some time. It's an invaluable resource for billions of people. It is critical in shaping public perception, often appearing at the top of search results. Additionally, its vast repository of information is a crucial source for training AI models. And by the way, it's worth mentioning, because some people think there's only an English language version. There's not. There's, I think, 300 different language versions of Wikipedia, all of different sizes in terms of content, of what they have and how much of it. But Wikipedia's open and collaborative nature poses a unique challenge for communicators and PR professionals. While its guidelines prohibit those with conflicts of interest from directly editing entries, the temptation to bend these rules has led to controversies and mistrust between the Wikipedia community and corporate interests. We'll revisit the topic of ethical Wikipedia entry, focusing on Butler Inc., a digital agency that has set the gold standard for navigating this complex terrain. Founded by William Butler, a widely regarded expert in public relations for Wikipedia, Butler Inc. has pioneered ethical practices that align with Wikipedia's principles such as neutrality and transparency. Earlier this year, you and I, Shell, had the opportunity to interview William in an FIR interview where we explored the evolving relationship between Wikipedia and the PR industry, the growing influence of AI on Wikipedia's ecosystem, and the nuances of ethical editing. And by the way, we'll have a link to that interview in the show notes. In an article published on the 25th of November, Butler Inc. set out their commitment to 4 core principles for engaging with Wikipedia. The first is neutral point of view, ensuring that all edits reflect a balanced and fair representation of the subject. Second, transparency, disclosing conflicts of interest and intentions to the Wikipedia editing community. Third, collaboration, working with volunteer editors instead of circumventing them or attempting to exert control. And fourth, respect for Wikipedia's rules, following the platform's policies and guidelines without exception. These principles speak to Butler Inc.'s values in upholding the highest ethical standards when engaging with the encyclopedia and as community of volunteer editors. They form a framework not just for Butler Inc.'s work, but also as a model for how PR professionals and organizations should approach Wikipedia. They demonstrate that ethical editing is not only possible, but essential for maintaining trust between Wikipedia's editors, readers, and the organizations that seek representation on the platform. In the article, William reflected on these guiding principles and how they have shaped Butler Inc.'s success. By prioritizing collaboration and transparency, the agency has avoided the pitfalls of unethical practices such as covert editing or promotional bias, which undermine Wikipedia's credibility. Butler Inc.'s work has proven that ethical consulting is not just a choice, it's a responsibility for anyone engaging with Wikipedia. This topic resonates deeply with me as I've directed projects in recent years requiring strict adherence to Wikipedia's policies, ensuring neutrality and transparency. The Butyl Inc. model exemplifies how communicators can navigate this challenging space, building trust with the editing community and their clients. These principles should be the benchmark for anyone working on Wikipedia, setting a standard of ethics that others must follow. So, I'd like to hear your perspective, Shell, on the importance of these core principles. How do you think PR professionals can adopt these as benchmarks to foster credibility and alignment with Wikipedia's ethos? And what lessons can we take from Butyl Inc.'s approach to ethical editing, especially given the increasing influence of AI on the platform? There's two questions there, actually. I thought it was going to be
There's two questions. You may have to remind me of the second one after I answer the first one. I think that these are blinding flashes of the obvious. These are things that we have known for a long time. Butyl Inc. does a wonderful job of embodying these in its practice. The challenge is, I think, getting this information into the hands of people who are planning to or needing to engage with content on Wikipedia. I think there are organizations that routinely engage with Wikipedia. They're big brands, for example. They have lots of products, lots of trademarks. They're in the news a lot, what have you. But I would think that most people who engage with Wikipedia do it once, right? Somebody reaches out and said, hey, did you know that the listing for your company shows your last earnings report from 2008? And so you get in touch to try to see if you can get that updated. And it can be a struggle. They've never heard of you. You're new to the platform. I went through this recently, and I mean, I know how to engage with Wikipedia. Been using it as long as you have. I've done entries in the past, but they had our former, now retired CEO listed. And as the head of communications, I didn't want to go in there and make the change. I can't do that. And so I went into the talk section and I explained, I pointed to an article from a third-party news source announcing the change in the CEO, and absolutely nothing happened. I had to go back in there and beg 3 or 4 times before somebody actually made that change. It can be tough for somebody who doesn't do this routinely to stay on top or even be aware of these rules. How do you get this information into the hands of people who are maybe doing this for the first time and maybe haven't paid attention to the nuance in the rules of Wikipedia?
It is not easy, without doubt, and that's something that has been a thorn in the side of Wikipedia ever since it was unveiled. My experience, what you did was the right thing, by the way. You don't try and edit it. You go through the talk pages and set out, make your case, declare your conflict of interest. And I found my experience, you have an account on Wikipedia, you create a profile page yourself, setting out who you are and why you're there. And if you've ever edited, emphasize all of that. And so you kind of say to people, look, go look at my profile, you see I'm legit, and declare the interest. And there's ways to do that are the Wikipedia approved ways. My experience when I started doing this some years ago now is it's a labyrinth to understand the policies and guidelines. It truly is seriously difficult, which is one reason why Butyl Inc. in particular is doing well in this area, because they have expertise from working with tons of clients internationally on the policies and procedures. I got an education on that on a project I worked with Butyl Inc. on that required me to know how to do all this. And boy, that was an education. But it's actually quite straightforward in following it. The difficulty, I think, or a difficulty, not the only one, there are many, is, and Bill Butyl mentions this in his article, is there are organizations out there, and there are PR professionals out there, unfortunately, who are quite willing to bypass where they can and go in and directly edit, even through pseudonyms.
Intentionally bypass. They know the rules and bypass them anyway.
Intentionally do that. And that's something Bill mentions is a major issue that we still have to overcome. I would argue this is certainly not condoning it. This is people we're talking about. And there's the good, the bad, and the ugly in every community. And this is a reflection of that, I think. There were issues 15 years ago now, probably 12 to 15 years ago now, where things came to a head. This was mainly in the UK, I think, between Wikipedia and PR, where there was a complete breakdown, any kind of relationship communication, after a number of severe scandals through big, well-known named agencies who were uncovered to have been lying through Wikipedia entries and falsifying entries in competitors' pages of their clients. And
isn't that where True came from? It was all of those
I don't remember the name. The big names. There were some big names.
No, True was the corporate representatives for ethical Wikipedia.
Yeah, that was Phil Gomes who started that, and that was not as because of this, but this was one of the highlights of. But the point I'm making is that there were strong efforts made in the UK, directed by the CIPR, to engage with Wikimedia Foundation about this, and I took part in that as a neutral, a neutral participant to bridge the gap. Philip Sheldrake was the other one. We made a presentation to a board meeting at Wikimedia Foundation, and that led to the first, if you like, policy for PR professionals developed by the CIPR not long after that, which has then evolved into 6th edition or something. So now it's difficult for anyone to say, oh, I didn't know how we have to go about it. Yes, you do. If you are a member of the professional body like the CIPR in the UK, and even if you're not, you can access these guidelines that tell you these are the steps you need to take to do this. It ain't rocket science to understand the process. What is rocket science is actually understanding the process. If you had to wade through each of the pillars, if you will, on neutral point of view, declaring conflict of interest, and a raft of others that are all to do with transparency and truthfulness and honesty, it is a labyrinth. And if you are unlucky to then engage with the editor community, the volunteer editor community, and not hear anything forever, or you get one of them who's just arrogant as hell, because they do exist. You have to realize, too, another thing, that this whole structure is volunteer-driven. So if you don't hear anything, there's not someone central you can go and chase and say, hey, what happened to my... It isn't like that. You have to keep repeating it, and you'll find avenues and workarounds to get allies to make your case for you. That requires a lot of time, and hence why firms like Butyl Inc. are doing well. I think, though, that we are in a time when, again, those surveys we just talked about on authenticity, etc., it's always been important. In a case like this, I honestly don't see how anyone who is a practicing public relations or communicator, let's say, and a member of any of the well-regarded professional bodies, could approach Wikipedia in anything other than following absolutely all these principles and guidances. And yet there are people who aren't doing that. So it needs to be, I think, emphasized that you shouldn't be doing stuff like that. You need to understand the right way to do this. It ain't difficult. Except understanding it is difficult.
I'll keep this short since it's my broken record routine. There are PR people out there who have not been trained, who do not belong to an association, who do not feel compelled to abide by a code of ethics, who are unprincipled in their approach to their job and do it any damn way they want to. And until we come to the realization that practicing PR people must be certified and are at risk of losing that certification, and as a result, losing their livelihood, we'll continue to have PR people who will do this any damn way they want, regardless of what the rules are and regardless of what resources are available.
Agree.
I'm getting off my soapbox now.
No, that adds to that bigger picture we've talked about. I wrote about this myself on my blog a month or two back on the real issues that ought to be addressed, please, in the profession. That is to do with its credibility. This is absolutely the heart of it. But in the meantime, for the 90% of PR professionals out there who are honest, reasonable folks, I would say Wikipedia has a place in your role if you're working for large clients in particular, but not exclusively so, that it is worth finding out how to address things. And indeed, to anyone, take a look at your own company's Wikipedia entry page. Go and look at what it says about your company. Do you recognize that? And again, put out of your mind any notion of marketing talk. This is neutral, point of view, warts and all, bad things that have happened, that's part of your history. You can't cover that kind of thing up. So it requires re-education for many people to get into this. The core issue, though, that we've been discussing here is just, I guess, concluding point to mention that the ethical approach is the only way you can do this as a PR professional and sleep at night, basically. So this is what you need to do. Butler Inc. makes a good case. They've published their ethical guidelines, and they note they've always had this, but they've never published them publicly. They've now done this. And if you read that, you'll think, yeah, we could do this. We should do this too. In which case, you've got your blueprint there to do something.
Greetings, Shell and Neville, and our listeners all around the world. Is Dan York coming at you from Shelburne, Vermont. And this past month, I've been looking a lot at kind of where do people go in a post-Twitter world? Because Twitter, of course, is not Twitter anymore. It's X, and it's a different company, a different vibe, a different thing, and now, controlled by Elon Musk. And in the wake of the U.S. presidential elections, where X was used particularly in support of the campaign of now President-elect Donald Trump, and where Elon Musk himself was very adamantly pro-Trump, many people are starting to question, is X the place I want to be? For some people it is. And I think it's important to recognize that. Some people are finding that X still does what they want, still has the audience, and is still there. But for others, they're saying, I think I want to go somewhere else. The Guardian was one of the big ones that made this change and announced very prominently that they will no longer post on Elon Musk's X from its official accounts. But others are looking at that too. The challenge, of course, as communicators is that we're moving into a much more fragmented world. The interesting part about Twitter was that you could connect with people from all across pretty much all sectors of our society in different ways. And now we're moving into places where it's not that easy. It's different. Blue Sky and Threads were two of the big recipients coming out of this election season. Blue Sky had announced first that they'd added a million new members as people left X. And they later announced they'd come up. They're now at 20 million users of the platform. Of course, Threads rolled out, commented that they've been getting over 1 million people a day in November signing up. They'd have had over 35 million. So, take that, Blue Sky, we're Threads. And Mark Zuckerberg had announced in an earnings call that they had over 275 million users of Threads. So, it's a big player in that space. Where do you spend your time? Who's there? Where's your audience? These are questions that are there. I'm over on Mastodon, which also saw an uptick, but not at the same scale as these two platforms. And I recognize it's not for everyone there, but that's where I'm at. And this is all happening in this space right now. One of the reasons I haven't been as excited about Blue Sky, people have asked me, why aren't you just joining in like everybody else is? Well, because it's another centrally controlled platform. Now, it has the promise of decentralization. And that's one of the interesting parts, is that it was developed, spun out of Twitter by Jack Dorsey to go and create a decentralized social media platform. And Jay Graber, who is the CEO, she and her team have done a fantastic job with developing a very, compelling platform. But it's not quite where I would personally like it to be. There's a great article by Christine Lemmer-Weber about how decentralized is Blue Sky really, which dives into technical pieces talking about how it has a promise of decentralization, but many parts of it are still centralized right now. You can't move your account. Mine is Dan York. You can't move that to another Blue Sky server in the same way you can like in Mastodon, where you can move to a different instance and a different server and work with that. It's not there yet. There's some key components and pieces around discovery, around messaging that still require the centralized services. And Blue Sky is a company. They've taken some venture capital funding, which is a common way to grow. But VC companies typically want an exit. They want to have some kind of return on their investment at some point. And so this leads typically to the enshittification of other platforms that we've seen, where there'll be some method of getting that return back for the investors. Blue Sky's also done some things like changing around the way the displays are. It used to be just reverse chronological. Now they've introduced displaying replies by how hot they are in terms of interaction engagement. So there's some different pieces and parts that are moving in there. So I'm a little wary. And on top of this, we were reminded that we don't control the handles, the account names that we have on, these social networks that are centralized. If you've been paying attention at all to what's been happening here in the United States, Alex Jones's InfoWars media sites have been up for bankruptcy due to his legal issues and with conspiracy theories and other stuff that's been going on. Well, The Onion is in the process of purchasing all of that coming out of the bankruptcy auction. And that included some of the X handles and stuff. Well, X made a legal filing saying, wait a minute, X owns every account. It can do with them whatever it wants, and it can go and do that. Now, sure, it's their platform. They can control that, but it's a reminder, you're not in control. And that to me is the part that I think I worry about with some of these new platforms. I want to be in control of my own destiny in some form, which is, again, why I'm partly spending a good bit of my time on Mastodon, where I have some more control. But we'll see where this all shakes out. Speaking of platforms, TikTok's obviously a big one for short form video, as we know, and it's been under fire here in the United States with a law that required its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to divest of its company of TikTok in order to stay active in the US. That's gone through a chain of legal pieces, and now it's at a court in Washington, D.C., where in theory, the first week of December, by Friday, December 6th, we're supposed to hear a verdict, which will say, is the law valid? Does TikTok have to divest or not? Probably regardless, it's going to go on up to the U.S. Supreme Court. But anyway, we'll see where that all goes. There could be changes coming to TikTok and how it's working. A final thing, pay attention to what's happening in Australia right now. They just passed a law banning children under the age of 16 from all social media platforms. There's a lot of vagueness in the law. It doesn't actually specify which platforms. There's a bunch of pieces. It doesn't say how to do it. It doesn't say how you'd limit somebody to Australia. I mean, there's a whole host of issues with the law. But they've put a stake in the ground. They said nobody under 16 can access these platforms. And it's getting a lot of press right now. And it could change a lot of how we interact and engage with people and everything else. There's a host of issues around that I could go into at great technical length around why this is broken and why it won't work. Just geographic blocking doesn't work, geographic location, the means aren't there. In theory, the law says that you're somehow going to be able to be age verified without showing a government ID. So who knows? The key point is watch what's happening. The law is supposed to take effect a year from now, so in late 2025, and they're going to be doing some trials of different technologies and things. But a lot of other countries and states here in the US and others are looking at this. And so pay attention to what's happening in Australia, because out of this will be some of what will probably be brought into other places of the world. With that, I'm going to wrap this up, send it back to you, Shell Neville. You can find more of my audio and writing at danyork.me, and talk to you soon in December. Bye for now.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. Great report, as always. Good collection of stories. A couple that jump out at me, having read about the ban that Australia has imposed on people under the age of 16 for using social media. I just can't see that working. I don't see how they're going to police that at all. So be interested in watching how that unfolds. And I am very curious to see how that court decision shakes out on TikTok. Although I don't expect TikTok to go anywhere regardless of how that case ends up, because the Trump administration comes into office in January, and Trump has, on the campaign trail, expressed his reversal of opinion and now is fully supportive of TikTok, which means that, I mean, it was Congress who passed the law that said it would be banned if it wasn't sold by sometime in January 2025, but it's up to the Trump administration to enforce that ban, and he could easily just instruct the powers that be not to enforce it, just to ignore it, and it will just continue rolling along as it has. So interested to see how all of that turns out as well. But great report. Do appreciate it. And speaking of that second Trump administration, which is coming in, corporate America faces a critical strategic challenge, and that is when and how to engage on sociopolitical issues. Companies are working hard right now to avoid being caught unawares as they were during Trump's first term, when events like the 2017 Muslim travel ban prompted nearly 100 tech CEOs to speak out against the policy. The dynamics are markedly different this time around, as DEI consultant Anne-Marie Malecha notes. During Trump's first term, a tight labor market gave employees significant leverage in pushing companies to take stands. Today's economic environment has shifted that balance of power, potentially giving companies more latitude in choosing their battles. That's likely why you're seeing so many companies here in the U.S. abandoning their DEI practices and goals, being the latest and one of the largest to make such a pronouncement. After the George Floyd murder, there was so much pressure to right a wrong that companies quickly fell in line around their employees' sentiments. Today, with right-wing extremists like Robbie Starbuck framing the narrative and employees with fewer levers of power to pull, companies are just as quick to cave to pressure and revert to pre-George Floyd practices. A particularly valuable framework for navigating these decisions has emerged in the form of a comprehensive decision tree that's being shared among corporate communications teams. This model begins with a fundamental question: is there a precedent? From there, it guides organizations through crucial considerations like whether the issue impacts business operations or stakeholders, whether it violates corporate values, and whether employees' rights are in immediate danger. The framework's strength lies in its nuanced approach to both proactive and reactive scenarios. This framework has been published in an article about this issue in Axios, and we have a link to it in the show notes, but I'm going to walk you quickly through just one path in this decision tree, starting again, is there precedent? You have yes and no options. So let's say the answer is yes, then it says address changes with key stakeholders. But if the answer is no, then it asks the question, are you changing course? If that's the case, then the questions are, does it impact employees? Does it impact business operations or shareholders? And does it impact corporate missions, corporate values, or mission? So let's just walk through, does it impact employees? If the answer is no, the statement's likely not needed. If the answer is yes, the question is, are they or their rights in immediate danger? If the answer is no, then the question is, are employees calling for a response? And there are options there: yes, but not en masse, no, and yes. But then the answer is yes to are they or their rights in immediate danger? If the answer is yes, then internal communications are recommended. If the answer is unclear, it says consider internal communications that acknowledge the issue, offer support for employees, even if a stance is not being taken at the moment. Now, looking ahead, companies are particularly focused on policy areas like immigration, healthcare, and trade that could directly impact their operations and workforce. A lot of these are also preparing response strategies in case they become targets in culture war debates or social media callouts. And that's a possibility that is growing given the Trump approach to governance by tweet. The key insight emerging from communication experts is that companies should prioritize issues where they have both authority and something meaningful to add to the conversation. And I might add, a dog in the hunt. As Janet Stovall and Kim Clark argue in their depth model approach, organizations must develop their own authentic voice rather than simply following the crowd on every issue. The depth model, by the way, stands for dialogue, education, purpose, transparency, and humility, a framework to help organizations communicate effectively on DEI and social justice issues by fostering authentic and strategic conversations. It's out of their book, which is titled, and I love the title, The Fine Art of Not Saying Stupid Shit. Anyway, the smartest strategy may be establishing clear processes now for evaluating when and how to engage, rather than trying to predict specific scenarios. I mean, the whole Trump thing is around chaos, right? Makes it hard to predict. So with the potential for rapid policy changes and social media confrontations, having a robust decision-making framework could prove invaluable in navigating the complex landscape ahead. This decision tree is a good place to start, It's in the Axios report, and we have a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, it is useful. Listening to what you were saying, how you were describing all this, Shell, it struck me that the landscape has changed in that, a kind of decision tree like this, it reflects the times when the structure was such that you had a model structure to follow, and everyone knew that, and it was all fine. Not anymore. You mentioned what Axios talked about, governance by tweet. That's definitely the landscape, and it's fast, and it comes blindingly out of your left field where you don't expect it to come, and you've got to react quickly. And there isn't time for a chain of approvals to be gone through, so you need to change your structure. That's going to affect everyone, and I think I got no research I'm going to share with you saying because it says so here. My feeling is we're going to see this. You got Musk on the scene. He's going to have a role in this. What's it called? This Department for Reducing Employees in the Federal Government, or whatever it's called. You got him there, and you got a raft of people, from what I've been reading, appointed who was like a DJ on a radio station, someone else who was some whatever with no political
Fox
experience.
News host,
right? No political experience. And strong agendas. They're all either anti-vaccine or they don't believe in any of this stuff, or it's all rubbish and it's lies and everything else. And it's the Democrats who are behind all the problems, all this kind of stuff. So you might have a policy, and I wonder, this is likely to happen, I'm sure, that the new government's in place from January, and announcements are made about this happening or that happening, and then Trump goes and posts a post on his Truth Social network. That's completely the opposite to that. So what's the federal government going to do? The spokesperson scramble around and change it. And I think in a short order, you're going to see what you believe and who you're going to pay attention to. And this is chaos coming. But more relevant, I guess, to our conversation on this topic, this is global. This is not just American companies need to figure this out. Because you've got already, I'm seeing almost daily, people talking about, well, if Trump does this with the tariffs, if there's a trade war coming, and this company's going to do that, and how we're going to do this, you've got that as part of the scenario. And it may be kind of second or third person down the track, as it were, compared to the primary audience, which is in the United States. This does affect everyone effectively. So I would say wherever you are, if you're a communicator, you need to be cognizant of these developments and these trends or these movements, whatever you might want to call them, in preparation for what's coming after January. And Trump is signaling already things. I'm going to do this when I'm inaugurated or after I'm inaugurated. So you've got, on the one hand, the dire stuff that we hear about, which is mass deportations out of the U.S. You're hearing people saying that can't happen. So you've already got chaos surrounding that. How's it going to happen? Who's going to do it? Is it going to happen? What about, what are you saying? You're going to deport everyone, including all those legally settled? Trump doesn't seem to make much distinction over all this. No one else is able to fill the vacuum. So we are looking to, I think, a chaotic period. And if I were a communicator in a senior role in a big organization, I'd be having attention paid galore to all of this and enabling me to be able to to provide counsel to the senior leaders of that organization, because you have to be prepared for the unpreparable, basically.
Yeah, he doesn't take office for 7 weeks, and he's already creating
He's already getting
chaos.
all the attention.
He had a phone call with the president of Mexico, and he gets out there and says, she promised to deal with the border. And she had to come out and say, I never said anything like that.
That's right.
He's just continuing to make shit up.
And
that's chaos.
I have a feeling he does. I think he does a lot of this, and he's laughing to himself as he's doing this thing.
He knows what he's doing, yeah.
Yeah, he does. He does.
But getting back to the corporate side of this, since I don't want it to just become a biased political diatribe,
right.
What organizations need to do in their planning, and it wasn't covered in any of the material I read on this, is consider that shift in the media that you use to get your message out. This is not just to deal with socio-political issues during the Trump administration. Look what happened during the campaign. We addressed this in one of our midweek episodes in the past month. that podcasts wielded undue influence in social media very little this time around. Nobody talked about, the Russia or China influence, social media feeds and the like having influence. We didn't hear about the sending people to a rally that didn't exist and things like this. This just didn't come up. The deep fakes didn't play that big an issue. Everybody was worried about that in social media. It's because the attention has shifted to other sources of information. And as we are planning those statements, those positions where we do feel compelled to take a position, then we have to consider, how are we going to do that? Are we going to be talking to influencers? Are we going to have them on deck ready to help us on our behalf? Are we going to have podcasts we can reach out to and get our spokespeople onto episodes to discuss it? Podcasts that have audiences that we want to reach. So we really need to be rethinking the priorities that we have for the media that we're going to use. Sending out a tweet these days may reach the audience you distinctly don't want to reach with these types of things. So I think it's time to be rethinking our media hierarchy anyway. This is a particularly urgent reason to jump on.
Yeah, we've got less than 2 months to get prepared for this. Okay. So let's talk about Blue Sky for a change.
I'm sorry, Blue Sky?
Blue Sky, that new network. So we have talked about Blue Sky, and you can't really escape from this in terms of what's happening with this. Most people, I suspect, don't care at all. And I'm probably still quite happy on Twitter, or X rather. Some are just blank, not doing anything. But in reality, this is a shift in the landscape of how you engage with people on social media, across social networks. And it's worth adding this topic, this kind of subtopic to it all, which is the growing apps ecosystem. So tools that you can use to do certain things in Blue Sky or use its data to do or whatever. It's quite interesting because we're seeing this emerging quite quickly as a haven for developer creativity that echoes the app building energy we saw in Twitter's early days. And that was in my mind when I was thinking about this topic. This reminds me of the 2007-2008 period. Twitter was founded in 2006. I joined in December that year. And in a sense, not a lot happened for 6-7 months or so until developers suddenly started doing things. And things began to pick up in a very interesting way in terms of functionality, in terms of enjoyment of what you were doing and how you could achieve things that otherwise you couldn't if developers had not got involved. Twitter was a developer-friendly service at that time. So those early days are very much an echo. While platforms today like Threads have yet to nurture innovation like this, Blue Sky is fostering an expanding ecosystem of third-party applications and tools. This open approach to development is a crucial differentiator, creating exciting opportunities for both users and developers. So an emerging hub for this, it's not totally built yet, but it's emerging, is the Blue Sky directory, launched in November by Mubashir Iqbal, a prolific creator with a history of building impactful side projects, according to his bio. The directory aggregates tools, apps, and community resources, making it easier for users to navigate and maximize their Blue Sky experience. Iqbal was inspired to create the directory after noticing the lack of a centralized resource for tools and starter packs within the Blue Sky ecosystem. In his words, "Like everyone getting active here, I'm looking for resources to help me make the most of the platform. I found a couple of GitHub repos and blog posts with lists of tools to get started, but not a great directory, so I'm going to build one." That's how it started a few weeks ago. Currently, the directory includes really useful sections curated by him. Starter packs. This is a new thing that features custom feeds and user collections that people have created that are tailored to specific interests and communities and are very useful for new people coming to Blue Sky and suddenly find there's a place or there's a tool they can use that includes other users and you can follow them straight away, all in one place, tuned to your own interests. Lists, which provide themed shareable groups of accounts or content for easier engagement. There's a directory of those. Clients, meaning apps, third-party apps, showcasing alternative apps for accessing Blue Sky, such as Gray Sky and Deck Blue. If you use TweetDeck in the days of Twitter, pre and post 2010, by the way, Deck Blue will be very familiar. And there are utilities, tools like the Blue Sky Feed Creator that lets users build custom feeds without coding knowledge. So Iqbal updates the directory dynamically, incorporating new tools and packs shared across the platform. His approach demonstrates the power of user-driven development and a commitment to making Blue Sky an accessible and resource-rich environment. This openness has also inspired developers outside the directory to innovate in unique ways. For instance, I've recently started experimenting with Auto Blue, a WordPress plugin by Daniel Post, a WordPress developer, that automatically shares blog posts to Blue Sky. This seamless integration of blogging and social media underscores Blue Sky's potential to become a hub for creators. We might see a resurrection of the blogosphere, Shell, because of stuff like this. Another standout is Blue Sky Comments, which allows comments on a Blue Sky post about a blog entry to appear directly on the blog itself. This reminds me a lot of the functionality of tools like Chat Catcher for Twitter, created by Shannon Whitley in 2008, which I used to unify social conversations around my WordPress blog posts back then. So again, the parallels between early Twitter and early Blue Sky are, I think, quite marked. This is not X. This has nothing to do with the toxicity on that platform. This is a harking back to the embracing of innovation and ideas and openness to enable things to work for lots of people. I think it's phenomenal. So these tools highlight that spirit of creativity and openness in Blue Sky's developer community, a stark contrast to the closed ecosystems of competitors like Threads. By encouraging such innovation, Blue Sky is cultivating an environment that empowers users and developers to shape the platform collaboratively. So, question for you then, how do you see this renewed app-building energy influencing Blue Sky's growth and positioning in the social media landscape? And what can we learn, or what can other platforms take from this approach to fostering third-party innovation, do you think?
Well, I think it's really smart on Blue Sky's part to allow this. There is a case to be made that Twitter took off because of the creation of all of these third-party apps that they allowed through an open API. Tweetbot, Twitterist, Phoenix, Talon for Twitter, TweetDeck, huge one, Echo Phone. And then there was the integration of Twitter into other tools like Hootsuite and Buffer. They've been shut off of Twitter because of the closing of the API. And I think that's why I'm kind of wondering if some of these third-party developers are a little nervous, because the owner of the platform can decide arbitrarily at any moment that we've gotten big enough. We want all of the views coming through our apps and not third-party apps, for the variety of reasons that they would have to do that. And keep in mind that Blue Sky started with Jack Dorsey. I know he's not involved anymore, but his DNA is still in the organization. In fact, when he brought in the CEO of Blue Sky, she's the CEO now, it was to create a federated approach for Twitter. And as she dug into the code, she said, I can't do that, but I could do that with a new social network. So he funded the startup of Blue Sky. That's how it got started. His DNA is there. I'd be a little worried that any third-party app is not long for this world once it becomes more advantageous from a business perspective to control all of the apps rather than have all of the third-party apps that help them build their user base.
I see where you're coming from with that. I wouldn't have that worry in the sense that you say Dorsey's DNA is still there. I don't think it is. It was at the very beginning, but this is not, what you see now is not what he envisaged back then, because this was going to be part of Twitter. This is part of how Twitter would evolve. But from what I've read, he got impatient with things, certain stuff he didn't like, so he quit and he left. So Jay Graber, the CEO, interesting woman, reading her bio in the background. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Others have said this too. Oh, yeah, but what happens if they suddenly say, sorry, we're closing everything? I don't believe they're going to do that. And I feel that what I see there and what I hear, this is not the same environment as Twitter at the time they did that, when Dorsey was still there, by the way. This is a different place, in my opinion. And I think that you hear it and you think, fine, keep an open mind on it then. But I don't see this at all. And I think any of these developers who are building stuff are taking a huge risk in that case, and they're willing to do it. I've not seen anyone really seriously making the claim that, watch out, you're going to lose your shirt because they're going to do this. I'm not seeing that. But I think more positively, as you yourself noted, that this is truly extraordinary that they are enabling this, which is great. And if they're doing this so that they can say, thanks a lot, guys, we're now going to do this on the road, I don't believe they're going to do that. But I hope I'm right.
I hope you're right, too. But business is business, and businesses make unpopular
decisions. Well, there's ethical business
and
there's non-ethical business. Yeah, I think if I were advising an organization who asked me the same question, I'd say that's a possibility.
Keep in mind,
take it into account in your planning in that case.
Yeah, keep in mind that their goal is not to make money through advertising, but through fees for extended services. And
that's what people are speculating about, and they have indicated that is something they're considering, but it's not set yet. They're not making any money, by the way, like every startup.
Yeah, they're just getting investor dollars, making a nickel.
Not making money, not making profits. No, they've got money to keep going and pay the staff and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but this is very early days. I mean, this is only just now taking off.
Yeah.
So I'd have a very open mind about what speculation is about. What's their intent?
I wouldn't avoid, as a user, I wouldn't avoid using any of these tools. I mean, when Twitter shut down access to the tool that I was using, I just switched to another one that was a Twitter-based tool, and it was fine. I mean, I didn't like it as much, but I still participate on the platform. So take advantage of these while they're there. And if they indeed never close the API and allow this ecosystem to continue to grow, that'll be great. If they don't, we'll deal with it.
I think there's things about their plans we don't know about. There's things about what possibilities are. I mean, maybe APIs will change in terms of how we regard them, how people might use them. There are too many known unknowns, and then to quote a famous American politician, there are a lot of unknown unknowns that we do know about. So there's a question mark over a great deal of this. So it's a leap of faith, I suppose you could argue. But I think that in the spirit of support, that listen to what people say about that, make up your own mind. But in the meantime, get to know what you can do with this. And if blue skies suddenly turn around in 6 months to a year and say we're actually going to do that, then your worst fears will have arisen. I don't believe that's going to happen.
Well, one of the things that was discussed recently on Blue Sky was Coca-Cola's holiday commercial. When Coke released its holiday advertisements this year, they weren't expecting the firestorm that erupted. Their decision to use AI to generate its highly anticipated Christmas commercial sparked immediate controversy, particularly among advertising and marketing professionals who labeled the results as soulless and disastrous. The controversy highlights a tension that has been growing in the worlds of advertising and marketing. On one side are creative professionals committed to human artistry and Hollywood quality production values. On the other are companies eager to demonstrate their technological prowess to Wall Street, particularly through high-visibility holiday campaigns. Coca-Cola's approach is particularly noteworthy. Working with 3 AI-focused agencies, they created multiple versions of their classic 1995 Holidays Are Coming commercial. Now, the company maintains that this wasn't about cost-cutting, but rather about personalization. They can now target 12 different U.S. cities with customized versions of the commercial, each showing local landmarks local to that city, which, makes sense as a sound reason to use AI. That's the same thing we've been talking about with your CEO delivering remarks at a town hall in America in English and then being able to create that video of them saying the same things in all the languages your employees speak around the world. It's AI-enhanced dubbing for all practical purposes. But the feedback came from people like Al Hirsch, a TV series creator, who commented on X, "Fun fact, Coca-Cola is red because it's made from the blood of out-of-work artists." And that tweet had nearly 700,000 views. Other comments read, "Pepsi, now's your chance to make a live-action ad bashing on Coke for using AI, and nothing like celebrating the spirit of Christmas with the most soulless commercial possible." Even Shelley Palmer, advanced media professor at Syracuse University and digital marketing consultant, said that it sucked. Now, Coca-Cola issued a statement, and I'm going to read the whole statement. It's a full paragraph here. The Coca-Cola Company has celebrated a long history of capturing the magic of the holidays in content, film events, and retail activations for decades around the globe. We are always exploring new ways to connect with fans and experiment with different approaches. This year, we crafted films through a collaboration of human storytellers and the power of generative AI. Coca-Cola will always remain dedicated to creating the highest level of work at the intersection of human creativity and technology. That was a big screw you to everybody who was complaining about the ad. But here's where we get a twist in the story. While advertising professionals mocked the badly rendered logos and shiny faces, consumers mostly seemed unfazed, the flood of insulting comments on YouTube notwithstanding. Research from System 1 shows the ad scored really well with viewers who either didn't notice or didn't care about the AI-generated imperfections that horrified critics. Now, this disconnect points to a broader shift in advertising. As Pratik Thakar, Coca-Cola's global head of generative AI, suggests, and I would note that he's the global head, not the chief AI officer, much of the backlash may reflect industry professionals' anxieties about their own futures. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola has already transformed its advertising approach, shifting 60% of its media budget to digital and creating thousands of contextually relevant content pieces measured in real time. And we're not seeing the same level of complaints around all of those. So while advertising purists may yearn for the days of "I'd like to buy the world a Coke," consumers appear ready to accept AI-generated content as long as it maintains emotional resonance. And that goes back to a point you made, Neville, in the look ahead about what consumers are looking for from social media. This suggests we're witnessing not just a technical evolution, but a fundamental shift in how brands connect with their audiences.
I think you've hit the nail on the head with that last sentence, Shell. I mean, I have to admit, I yawned when I heard about all the criticism. It reminds me of what's been going on here in the UK over the past couple of weeks about the rebranding of Jaguar, the car maker, new logo, that has had everyone from politicians to celebrities to whoever complaining. They destroyed the brand, venerable British brand. My goodness, what's going on? But they're holding firm and basically doing the same kind of response idea as you suggested Coke is doing. I just wonder if the critique is mostly from industry people, i.e. advertising folks and so forth, and yet the consumers that the ad is aimed at kind of like it. How do you deal with that? What do you do? Is that not the same perhaps as Hollywood movie comes out, the critics absolutely slam it, but it goes on to make billions in the box office? Do you care what the critics say in that case?
I think that's when you issue a statement like the one that Coca-Cola did that said, we're fine with this. This is very consistent with our history, and we're going to keep on doing it.
Yeah. I'd not seen the ad. I just dug it out now on YouTube, and I see all the 3,000 comments, including the top of the list is that one you mentioned about Pepsi. Now is your chance to make a live-action ad bashing Coke. So, you're a multi-billion-dollar company, says one comment. Hire some animators. So, I get it. I can't really say much, Shell, not having seen the ad. I'm going to take a look at it.
Yeah, I read probably 4 or 5 articles about this because when this erupted, it really erupted. And so I read several articles, and then I went and found the ad and watched it, and I kind of shrugged, and I said, I don't see what the big brouhaha is here. I should say, I don't see what the kerfuffle is here. It seemed fine to me. I had no issue with it. And if I was just, sitting back on the couch watching a football game, and during the commercial break, that commercial came up, I would not lean forward and go, hey, that's really lousy AI they used there.
Yeah. Unless you're in the industry, then you would.
Yeah, this may be if I was worried about my job and I saw that. Although, I have to tell you, if I didn't know that had been produced using AI and I watched it casually during a commercial break in a football game, I wouldn't have wondered. I would have just said, well, yeah, there's another animated Coke commercial.
So I may actually, it's more than one ad, right? There's a series. Because I saw some
12 versions of it.
Okay, I saw something the other day on Blue Sky, which I looked at for about 10 seconds before my phone rang, and so I didn't. Which was an animation of a giant Santa Claus in a store, leaning behind him and picking up a Coca-Cola truck and placing it on the street outside, and the truck then drives away. And I first thought was, that's AI. I said to myself, that must be part of it then, I guess.
I don't recall that particular scene, but I've only watched it once.
But
I'll tell you what, because it's on YouTube, I'll embed that video in the show notes for this episode when I get around to doing the show notes.
When you get around to doing the shows. I mean, it's an interesting situation. And I think, like the Jaguar situation I mentioned, what I see the outcome from this, the immediate outcome from this, is that the brand is getting huge attention. Everyone is thinking about Jaguar cars. And even the ones who aren't commenting, I've not seen a huge amount of support. I've seen lots of people saying, look, get over this, for God's sake. It's just a car logo. I mean, it's actually more than just a car logo. So you might have the same with the Coca-Cola thing. But nevertheless, bottom line, the brand's getting a lot of attention. Who was it who said no publicity is bad publicity? I mean, this could be in that scenario.
That's right. People are thinking about Jaguar, so that can't hurt. But yeah, I remember the discussion with Mitch Joel years ago about the fact that when radio emerged, a lot of vaudeville theaters went out of business because the entertainment shifted to radio. And it's the same thing. It's happened hundreds of times for various reasons as innovations have taken root and become default ways of doing things. To suggest that AI is not going to become a typical and regular component of video production is ridiculous. So get used to it and figure out how to make a living in that world.
It actually applies to general areas we've talked about, which is, you're a copywriter and using AI to write some of your stuff. That it fits into that area too. We can't have this. You need a copywriter to do. There's still that thinking there. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that things are evolving quite fast in these areas. And it would be a grave error, I think, for any organization or individual even to just dismiss and say, you can't use that for that purpose. And maybe part of it is articulating the underlying fear of change, the underlying belief in many cases, and it's probably true in some, that deploying this technology in that industry is going to lead to job losses. And you can kind of do the thinking yourself to think of a certain role. I mean, one thing I think a lot about when I see the recycling crews coming around the neighborhood to empty the recycling, if ever there was a job designed for robots, this is it. And those 6 guys in this brand new truck who do a great job, their days are numbered, is the thought I have sometimes. So is that bad? I don't know. It's change. And at a time when every industry everywhere is struck for money and resourcing and all this stuff, these are sort of an inevitability about some of this, unpleasant though much of it is. It's people we're talking about, right? So this is part of that, it seems to me.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is that as jobs are lost, jobs are also going to be created. I mean, 30 years ago, how many web developers were there? How many social media consultants and employees were there? How many companies had departments that were digital?
How many podcasters were there?
That's right. And podcast advertising services. And this is creative destruction. This is the way it works. It's been that way for centuries. The old buggy whip manufacturer complaining about automobiles. This is the way the world works. Deal with it.
So tune in next time for more good news about what's happening in our world.
And that will draw this episode of For Immediate Release to a close. Our December episode is scheduled to drop on Monday, December 23rd. We will be recording that the Saturday before. In the meantime, I hope that you will drop us a comment. The way most people do that these days is commenting on the LinkedIn or Facebook posts that we offer up to let you know that a new episode's available. We also post those on Threads, on Blue Sky, on Mastodon. We haven't talked about Mastodon in a while, but we do share our posts there. And there are other ways to comment. You can send us an email. Send that email to fircomments@gmail.com. Attach up to a 3-minute audio if you would like. We haven't had one of those in ages. So, that's because Kim Hansen retired. So we don't get audio comments anymore. You can record that audio comment directly from our website at firpodcastnetwork.com. There is a send voicemail tab on the right. Just click that. You can leave a comment on the show notes at firpodcastnetwork.com. And we do hope that you will leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcast so that new listeners can find us. And that, dear listeners, will be a 30 for this episode of For Immediate Release.